Hello, my name is Carolyn Nah. I'm a resident of the city of Bridgeport. I was not born here. I was born and raised in the South, so I do have a vast experience on racism and sexism and all kinds of schisms. But I've come to realize that it's time for us to come to a place in our lives where we must learn to forgive and not be so cold-blooded. And I just think that our society is turning into a cold-blooded society, and it bothers me, considering all the foreclosures that we have in America. We have the homeless population on the rise. You have family, women and children winding up in shelters, brownfields eroding our community, drugs in rat-infested slums and depressing ghettos. And I would think that there are so many things that we need to address right now than to focus all of our attention on somebody that made a mistake. I mean, I'm not going to say that what Mr. Sterling said that was correct. I mean, and I think that it was wrong, and I'm sure that the people that are in charge have punished him. But I do think that to bring that kind of power down right now, I can think of many, many ways that it could have been utilized. You know, I have always said that these people that run around here and call themselves leaders are really not the leaders. Your artists and your athletes and these people that got this celebrity status have tremendous power, and you just saw that in the last couple of days. Now, if they would take that same power and bring it to these inner cities and stop some of this, clean up some of these brownfields, and take a hard look at the education and see the children that are being left behind and the massive incarceration of African American men, and take that same power, you'll be surprised the difference that it would make. And so I am concerned about that they would take that power and crucify an 80-something-year-old man, you know, when we can crucify the system and we would stand together. Just take the Trayvon Martin situation for an example. If the entire community has stood up, then we would have a court system. They would be back in court right now. Could you pause for a minute?
Sure. Well, probably the most obvious and immediate question was the NAACP, because the NAACP had given him, this was going to be his second Lifetime Achievement Award, not the first.
But if you notice, the NAACP hasn't made a statement. You've had all the people from around the country talking. The only time you heard them mention of the NAACP that they're taking back the award, they're not going to give it to them. But that's the oldest civil rights organization in this country. They have not made a statement. You do not, right as of this moment, have the position of the NAACP. Because the people that run the NAACP are not stupid folks. You know, they realize that we have housing condition, we have education system, a lot of children are being left behind. Look at the argument over the charter schools that we're having right here in the city of Bridgeport, where you're trying to segregate the school system. And I'm a product of the 60s where we fought against segregation. And right here in the city of Bridgeport, they're trying to reinstitute segregation by bringing in these charter schools. So you segregate the school system, and so I said, and when we went to Hartford a couple of weeks ago, we've already fought these battles. Why are we bringing these battles back again to try to segregate the school system? Then you got the homeless population. I mentioned earlier, the foreclosures are at an all-time. We haven't recovered from the foreclosure situation and those subprime loans. Those are some serious, serious issues. If you were just one block from here, they have a shelter for the homeless. And if you go over there, the families have to be there by a certain time to get a number so that they can get in there so they can just sleep for one night. And you have women and children standing in that line. You have women standing there that once upon a time had good jobs. You have educated people standing in that line. So when I ride through the city of Bridgeport, I'm sure the same thing is going on in Chicago, Los Angeles, Detroit, Atlanta, all over this country. We have the same problem. So if you run away from here and try to go to Atlanta, unless you got some money, you're going to wind up in one of those rat-infested slums and depressing ghettos. I mean, that's a real fact. Racism is not real in America. I mean, it's not, nothing new in America. It's very real. It's not going anywhere. It's always been here. I grew up in the South. I grew up with racism, and I learned to live with it. But I have never in my life seen racism like I've seen it in up north. We call it up south. You know, and everybody knows that it exists. Everybody knows that there are people that have the same feelings that Mr. Sterling has. We have black racism. We call each other the N-word, which I do not like. And I do not even allow it to be spoken in my house because I know what it stands for. You know, and so my point here is taking that energy that we use in the last couple of days to help us clean up these brownfields in Bridgeport, Detroit, Philadelphia, Chicago. You got a large number of cancer The cancer is at an all-time high in these communities. Asthma. These kids are coming to schools with asthma pumps in their bags, as opposed to pencils and paper. They're coming with asthma pumps. And that's heartbreaking to see that. You got a massive incarceration of African-American men that's going to jail for 40 years for a vial crack. And if you sentence a 17-year-old child, a young man, for 25 years for a vial crack, that's a life sentence. I mean, whether you put a number on it or not. So those kinds of things need to be looked at carefully. Then you got all these women and these children at centers trying to get in to eat 3 meals a day, and most of the churches are providing that. Now, the money that some of these athletes make, some of these celebrities, if they put some of that money back into the community, I believe that it would make a difference. And I'm just basically repeating myself. I'm very concerned about that. At this time in our lives, we don't need to be cold-blooded. We need to be more giving and more loving and more forgiving. And I've never seen so much mean spirit in all of my life. Nobody wants to forgive anybody anymore. You know, I was sharing with somebody a couple of days ago about that Sterling situation. And I said, I would love to be part of that discussion because I practice Christianity. And I said, remember in the Bible when they brought Mary Magdalene to Jesus, they said this lady was caught in a very act of adultery. And they all had stones in their hands to stone her. And Jesus stooped down and wrote something on the ground. The Bible doesn't say what he wrote on the ground. But he raised his head and said, he that is without sin amongst you, let him cast the first stone. They all threw down their stones and walked away because they all had done the same thing. So how many of us in this country are so angelic that, I mean, we all of a sudden we got all these angels running around here with invisible wings that we cannot forgive one person? You know, yes, it was wrong what he did. Yes, it was wrong. And no one in this country in their right mind is going to say, well, you know, he was right. I don't think anybody's going to say that because he was wrong. But what about taking that step to forgiveness? You know, if I did something wrong right now, I would want somebody to forgive me. So this country is built on Christianity. And you know, but we got all these different religions in here now, and nobody want to forgive. Nobody want to talk about Jesus. Nobody want to talk about God. Everybody's using the supreme. Well, there's a supreme rule out there because they don't want to offend anybody. But to get on national television and call somebody a bigot is also a form of racism. And you know, that is not right for any of us to be putting adjectives behind other people's names. We should not be doing it. You know, and we should be working on helping to train the next generation. People like Mr. Sterling, those guys are dying out. They're not going to be around that much more long. This generation is starting to embrace diversity. You got a lot of people willing to sit down and talk. People are coming to people's homes for dinner. They're sitting down with each other. They're talking and trying to work it out. And so people are not trying to be on the other side of it. I know that there are always going to be people like this in our society today. That's why Jesus came. You know, because the Sadducees hated the Pharisees. Go ahead with your question, sir.
Okay, now. Okay. All right.
The other thing that I'm concerned about is all these voices that I hear. You know, I know many of them are life members of the NAACP. And as you know, the NAACP is the oldest civil rights organization in this country. But I have yet to see any of them on the battlefield with the NAACP issue. Now, they will get up and talk and use their celebrity status, and people love them because they are a celebrity. But that's tremendous power, but it can be turned into something else. I mean, if you got power and you don't know how to use it, you just like Paul says in Corinthians, you're just like a sounding brass, whichever way he puts it, just noise. You just noise because you're not making a difference in anybody's life. You know, you have to make a difference. The question that all of those people must ask themselves is, what will my end be? When I come to the end of my journey in this life, what would my contribution have been made to mankind? Would I have been at the crucifixion? Or would I have saved a child from asthma, an old lady from cancer? You got old women in shelters now. You got older senior citizens eating what their cats are eating. They have to eat cat food because their prescription drugs are too high. You know, so they cannot afford Medicare. Whatever checks they get, they spend it on their medicine because they got all kinds of diseases, whether they're false or real. I don't know. I'm not in the medical field. But I do know for a fact that older people are spending a lot of money on medicine and they're going hungry every day. I see it with my own eyes. I see when I ride through downtown Bridgeport. Last night it was raining very hard. The lights went out here. My husband and I went downtown while we were waiting for the lights to come back on. I saw homeless people huddled you know, in storefronts that are closed up, and it broke my heart. I won't even get off at the exit that would bring me past the Prospect House, the homeless shelter, because it's breaking my heart to see all those women out there with those little children in their hands. Now, one of the things that I do want to say, and I really mean this, it is the first time in my life, and I think everybody's life, on Sunday morning in this country, you find a large number of African Americans sitting in somebody's congregation. And I don't know what they're talking about in these congregations. I don't know what these pastors are preaching from these pulpits. But one of the things that I have learned my entire life of being in the church is forgiveness. Learn how to forgive. And because I practice Christianity, we want to live and use the teachings of Jesus Christ. You know, I don't think that we are such saints that if somebody slapped you on one side of your face, you should turn the other one. But I think that we need to learn how to be a little bit more humble now. Because people are mean-spirited. People can record conversations. People can hurt you on tapes. People can entrap you. And all these forms of entrapment, people they've never used the word entrapment in this situation, but it's a form of entrapment. I mean, if you listen to the tape, you see the lady baiting him. What do you have against black folks? Nothing. You know, I mean, you spending money on somebody, you spending $250,000 on somebody, giving those kinds of toys to play around with. You know, you can't voice your opinion on it. I mean, please. I mean, give me some respect, basically. And any human, that's a quality of a human being. All of us would say that. If my husband was cheating on me right now, I would say, Tony, with a young woman, I would say, Tony, my God, I mean, she's riding up in front of the house. Tell her, don't bring her down here. I mean, I may not be as nice as Mr. Sterling because she come down here, she may get her legs cut off. I mean, but that's a human quality that we all have. Jealousy is one of the emotions that we have. And so we cannot be such saints that all of a sudden we all have grown wings now. And oh no, we're not getting ready to forgive. Oh no, we're not getting ready to do that. So I really wonder, those people that are non-Christians, is that one of the teachings of Christianity? No. And I want to go back to your question, is that would I come to a hanging? No, because I actually have witnessed them. I grew up in the South. Mm-hmm. And where the blacks lived on one side of the track and the blacks lived on the other side. My mother hated police officers because they killed her only brother. But that mean that every cop in the United States is a bad cop? No. Because without public safety, what kind of community will we be living in? You know, but that doesn't mean that because this one person made a mistake and said some stupid things that we can condemn everybody and condemn him. I just think he should have been forgiven. That's just me.
Could you say a little bit, because I don't think we really got it clearly before on the tape, about your own background?
Oh, let me just tell you a little bit about me. Anybody that know me, now people that looking at this may say Carolyn's an Uncle Tom, or she may have sold out, or whatever. Everybody knows me that I know I have a black conscience. And know that I am one person that cannot deal with racism. I don't like it. I grew up in the South, in a very small town in Georgia. I saw racism firsthand. I mean, we was mistreated. We was called the N-word all our lives as little children. And my mother and father was to sit us down and point towards the sky and say, there's great hope out there for you. You see the sky? There's things beyond what you can see. They encouraged us to leave the South. And if you go back in history, study the history of the great migration of African Americans from the South to the North, many of them left looking for the promised land, but many of them was trying to get away from racism. But little did they realize, when they left the South, coming to the North, that they was going to run into the real racism here, you know. So I grew up in the South. I grew up with racism. My mom and my dad, I saw them mistreated all of their lives. I saw my dad could not speak. My mom could not say anything because for fear that they were being hung. My brother, actually, they had to wrap my brother up in a quilt, put him on the back of a truck, and take him to Savannah, Georgia, and put him on a train to send him to Florida because he kicked a white man at one time. So those are the kind of fears that black people at one time lived under. And so I grew up with that kind of stuff. So when I came here, you know, my call is civil rights. I love civil rights. I cannot stand to see anything mistreated. I can't even stand to see a bird locked up in a cage. You know, that's just how deep I feel about racism and discrimination. And so I don't like it when I see people discriminated. I don't like the massive incarceration of African American men because I'm in the bail bond business and I know there's no justice in that courtroom. I see the injustice there. I know that it's not fair when a lot of these women are losing their homes and they're going begging on their knees, give me another chance until I get another job, and they don't give them another chance. I see it. I see the tears in people's eyes when they take away their food stamps. And there's a young man here in Bridgeport. I bailed out of jail about a month ago. He's a heroin addict. And he's 37 years old. And I said to him, when you go to court, tell the judge that you're not a dealer, that you're an addict. You need help. He did that. And they said, well, you can't, in order to get into a program, you have to have state insurance. Well, if you're a convicted felon, you can't get state insurance. So I said, then what do they expect you to do? I said, our United States Senator from Connecticut is in Washington right now asking for $20 million to bring back to Connecticut to fight heroin addiction. Why should you be treated different from the white kid in Westport that got a heroin problem when they're trying to put this thing in everybody's home just in case they find the kid slumped over the bathtub from an overdose of drugs? And these are all affluent suburban communities. This is a reality. But you got a poor black man strung out on heroin and he can't get help. That hurts me. I see that. So I see racism. I'm not sitting watching some television and watching it from the sideline. I'm out there in the middle of the road with the man in the road. So I see the pain and I feel their pain. And this is what I think some of these celebrities need to use their celebrity status to come down here and walk in the road with us. And many of them come from the same communities that I came from, or similar communities. But what has happened, and my mom and our dad taught us, never forget from whence you have come. That's why this situation with Mr. Sterling, I am very, very concerned that there's going to be a lot of repercussion behind this. And that's why I'm telling black people, be careful. Be careful. Because when you jump on the bandwagon as black people, if they do this to an old white man that's worth $1.7 billion, what in the world would they do to you when you're not worth anything? So you all better be careful.
Sort of an underlying issue in the whole matter is that this was a release of a taped conversation, which was a private conversation.
Right.
And what a lot of people are wondering and thinking about is, you got cell phones, you have, forget it, so many different ways. What do you think about the overreaching or the possibility that this can be used to overreach and violate all kinds of people's rights, meaning, in other words, people don't even have any form of privacy at all?
Well, I have, the reason why I'm so concerned about this particular issue, because this was spoken behind closed doors in the privacy of somebody's bedroom regarding a love relationship. Unfortunate for Mr. Sterling, he had a stupid mistress, unfortunate for him, so that also can be used as a form of entrapment. If I was an attorney, that's the argument that what I would be using. Why would you entrap this old man just to get your point across? But everybody ate it up because their opinions are being shaped by what we call popular opinion. And so you have, if they do this to Mr. Sterling, and I told somebody the other day, black folks in this country better watch out. It's his time now. And if you think racism have gone away, with all our conversations being taped, they can fly over your head. They can pick up. They know with the cell phones, the GPSs, everybody know where everybody is at all times right now. So there's nothing in secret. So what if I made a statement in my house and somebody recorded? They said, well, Carolyn, I tried to fight it in the courts, and they said, well, we're going to use Sterling as an example, and they're going to use that case in law school from generations to come. So none of us are safe anymore. That's what bothers me.
Okay, let me ask you this question. Suppose this had happened. Suppose people had told you about what he had said, and then all of the people, Oprah Winfrey, Magic Johnson, this one, that one, LeBron James, suppose all these people had called you up and said, we need to have a meeting with you, and we want to know what you think we should do in this situation. What would you have told them?
I would have said it's time for us all to sit down at the same table and have a national discussion on race. And you need to put all the cards on the table, not half of them on the table. Everything need to be laid out on the table. And we need to come to the table and say, if this situation is this big, then we're going to go back to those same things that I'm talking about now. Mm-hmm. How can we use this situation to foster the foreclosure, to stop the dumbing down the education system in the urban community, to clean up some of the brownfields? Let's just talk about that right now. And then when we can talk about these things, and these are race-related issues, then we would say, I'm not going to spend my time standing at a crucifixion to crucify an 80-something-year-old man. I'm just not that cold-blooded yet.
Now, obviously, there have been headline after headline and hours spent now discussing this. And all kinds of people are talking about it and weighing in on it.
Well, they're weighing in because it's the signs of the time right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can see who's ruling the universe right now. Mm-hmm. The battle between good and evil. Evil seems to be winning right now. But that's a perception because good always wins over evil. So everybody, there is no one that I have talked to that say that Mr. Sterling should have kept his effing mouth shut. Mm-hmm. And that's what he gets. He gets what he deserved. But do you know how many people that feel like Mr. Sterling feels? But are still out there hidden? That's laying in the cut? Mm-hmm. You know how many people feel like that? Blacks and whites. Jews and Gentiles. Mr. Sterling himself is a minority, you know. And so, I mean, there are other people that feel the same way. So my personal Carolyn Nah would not be at a crucifixion. That way, I would not come. If you invited me to a brownfield site where the cancer is on the rise and the asthma is at an all-time high, and you got we want to talk about the massive incarceration of African American men, I will be willing to join you at that meeting. But I would not join you at a crucifixion for one person. No, I would not have accepted the invitation.